Hey, good day to you all. This time I'm going to talk about Sonnet 29. I'm going to follow it up with a video about Sonnet 30. Sonnets 29 and 30 go together. Across the 154 sonnets, there's quite a few groupings of two or three sonnets. In both 29 and 30, the persona, maybe it's Shakespeare, is feeling bad, and he feels better when he thinks of his friend, the one he loves. They're both great sonnets um, because Shakespeare, despite being so remarkable, presents himself as being frail, human like the rest of us. There's also a bit of comedy in the two sonnets, maybe a bit more so in Sonnet 30, a bit more effectively so, but perhaps a little bit in Sonnet 29 also, which is a little rare in the sonnets. Anyways, I'll get started. When in disgrace with fortune and men's eyes. It's a great first line. My luck sucks and everyone hates me. I all alone beweep my outcast state. It's a bit funny, bit of humor. I'm all alone. I'm, crying. I mean, obviously it's, not that funny a sentiment, but, it's hard to talk about these things in all seriousness, I think, and still be effective. Then comes the third line, which is an abomination, really, maybe intentionally so. And trouble deaf heaven with my bootless cries. So I'm, crying to heaven. Heaven's deaf. Bootless meaning useless. But listen to this. Listen to this. Um, like normally in the I got my beating fist ready. Normally in the poems, in fact, across all of them, it's like iambic pentameter. It's 5 beats, each with like 2 subbeats, iambs or feet. So when in disgrace with fortune and men's eyes, da 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 da, and it flows into the next line. I all alone beweep my outcast state. But yeah, listen to this. And trouble deaf heaven with my bootless cries. Deaf heaven, like it's crazy. Deaf heaven, going from the F to the H, and trying to like mash it in so it fits. It doesn't really fit. And trouble deaf heaven with my bootless cries. And maybe it's done intentionally. Maybe it's meant to be jarring. It could be the case. It's kind of like that in Sonnet 66 when we read, and strength by limping sway disabled. It should be, and strength by limping sway disabled, but no one's going to say that. But maybe that the fact that the rhythm loses its way is actually illustrative of what's going on, of what's being described, or indeed the mental state in this case. And look upon myself and curse my fate. Same kind of idea. I'm looking at myself. I'm wishing life wasn't like this. Wishing me like to one more rich in hope. I wish I was like someone who had hope. When we feel depressed, one of the things that goes is hope. Featured like him, like him with friends possessed. I wish I looked like him. I wish I had friends. Desiring this man's art and that man's scope. I mean, this is a crazy line coming from Shakespeare. One of the most artful people to have ever lived. Desiring this man's art. I mean, maybe he just means kind of artfulness or wit, but still, and that man's scope, that man's accomplishments, that man's range of abilities. And then my favorite line in the sonnet, with what I most enjoy contented least. It's a bit like the loss of hope, but yeah, when we feel bad, the very things that we normally like doing, they don't bring us any pleasure. So it's a very perceptive line. I really like it. Then the sonnet changes up. It flips, it becomes optimistic. Yet in these thoughts, I'll read 4 lines together. They work together. Yet in these thoughts, myself almost despising. Haply I think on thee, and then my state, like to the lark at break of day arising from sullen earth, sings hymns at heaven's gate. So I'm pretty much despising myself. But then I think of you, and then my state changes. It's like when the lark starts singing at the break of dawn. And then for me, it's like I'm hearing hymns at heaven's gate, at the gates of heaven. But it's funny because the lines don't really flow properly. Listen to this. Yet in these thoughts myself almost despising. That's 6. The ing kind of pushes us into the 6th beat. And that causes troubles later on because Shakespeare then rhymes the despising with arising, and that then means that that line, the arising line, doesn't flow on well to the next line. So, yet in these thoughts myself foremost despising, haply I think on thee and then my state, like to the lark at break of day arising from sullen earth. Like the sentence should just run on. Like to the lark at break of day arising from sullen earth. But if we say it with the intended rhythm, there's this extra beat in there, which is jarring. Like to the lark at break of day arising from sullen earth sings hymns at heaven's gate. So I don't know. An imperfection from not enough editing, intentionally jarring, not sure. We then finish with 2 very elegant lines, the rhyming couplet. For thy sweet love remembered such wealth brings, that then I scorn to change my state with kings. Such simple elegance. For thy sweet love remembered such wealth brings, that then I scorn to change my state with kings. So when I think of you, it makes me so happy that I wouldn't change my situation with kings. Interestingly, the word state appears for the 3rd time in that last line. It appears at the end of the 2nd line. It appears at the end of the 10th line. Is that an imperfection as well? Or is there something intended in that? Not sure. But my broad sense still is that this poem is somewhat imperfect. Certainly when compared with Sonnet 30, which I'll talk about next. Okay, enough of that. And now for the poem in its entirety. When in disgrace with fortune and men's eyes, I all alone beweep my outcast state, and trouble deaf heaven with my bootless cries, and look upon myself and curse my fate. Wishing me like to one more rich in hope, featured like him with friends possessed, desiring this man's art and that man's scope, with what I most enjoy, contented least. Yet in these thoughts, myself almost despising, haply I think on thee, and then my state, like to the lark at break of day arising from sullen earth, sings hymns at heaven's gate. For thy sweet love remembered such wealth brings, that then I scorn to change my state with kings.